You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hello, and thanks for joining Revolution 250. This is where we remember events that took place 250 years ago this week. It's a short bonus episode from the American Revolution podcast to remember these important 250th anniversaries from the Revolutionary War. This week, we remember the British raids up the Potomac River before finally departing from Virginia. These raids took place during the week of July 23, 1776. John Murray, the 4th Earl of Dunmore, served as the last royal governor of the colony of Virginia. He took that office in 1771 after being promoted from governor of New York. As of late 1774, he was still pretty popular, leading a war against the Indians in what is today West Virginia. That war became known as Lord Dunmore's War. His support rapidly deteriorated in early 1775, around the time the first shots were fired at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. Dunmore had done what he could to suppress dissent, including preventing the House of Burgesses from meeting. Things came to a head when patriots, led by Patrick Henry, tried to seize gunpowder from the Public magazine at Williamsburg. Dunmore removed the powder and kicked off the fight with the Patriots. After attempts to capture him, Dunmore fled to a British naval ship in May, taking a Patriot musket ball in the leg during his escape. He established a base of loyalist operations at Norfolk. That fall, he supported British naval forays up the Hampton River, but these proved ineffective. Following that raid, Dunmore issued a proclamation in November of 1775, calling on Virginia Loyalists to rally to the cause. Part of that proclamation called on the slaves of patriots to flee their patriot masters and join the Loyalists in exchange for their freedom. Some have looked back on this as an early foray into abolition. It really wasn't, though. The slaves of Loyalists were not eligible. This was an attempt to undermine the patriot cause. White Virginians saw it as an effort to encourage a slave uprising, which of course was the greatest fear of any state with a large slave population. Dunmore's call was essentially the nuclear option, causing almost all white Virginians to consider him a major threat to their lives. A few weeks later, Patriot forces assaulted the British stronghold at Kemp's Landing, and after that, they fought the Battle of Great Bridge. Norfolk was burned, and the Loyalists had to give up any land bases in Virginia, taking refuge on British Navy ships. By January of 1776, the British or Loyalist forces had no permanent presence on the mainland in Virginia. Governor Dunmore remained aboard ship in Chesapeake Bay, waiting for Britain to send more Army and Navy reinforcements. Those never came, since London's priority was establishing a base in New York. The British established a small base on Gwynn's Island, which was a small island in the Chesapeake Bay. There, some Loyalists joined him, including many Virginians who were escaping from slavery. With them, he formed what was dubbed the Ethiopian Regiment, made up of these former slaves. A life aboard the ships, or even on the tiny Gwynn's Island, was very difficult. Disease, especially smallpox, killed hundreds of them, and there were insufficient resources to feed them. Patriot artillery attacked the island and the surrounding ships beginning on July 9th, once again forcing the British to flee. Dunmore took his fleet, which consisted of about 96 ships by this time, northward, establishing a landing on St. George Island in Maryland. This was at the mouth of the Potomac River, and they established this on July 12th. A landing party, which went to the mainland a few days later in search of supplies, was repulsed by Maryland militia. Desperate for supplies, Dunmore approved a raid up the Potomac River, commanded by Captain Andrew Snape Hammond. The primary mission was to collect fresh water, food, and other supplies, but there are some who say that they hoped to raid Mount Vernon and perhaps even kidnap Martha Washington. It's not clear if there's any truth to these allegations, but the British reached Dumfries, which was about 15 miles downriver from Mount Vernon. On July 23rd, the Loyalist forces burned several buildings there. They also took on fresh water and fought a skirmish with the Stafford County militia. It was also around this time that a slave from Mount Vernon, a man named Harry Washington, fled the plantation and joined up with the British forces. 2 days later, on July 25th, the British attempted another landing on St. George Island to get some more water. They faced another skirmish, burned a few more buildings and fields, and eventually had to withdraw from there. Unable to establish a safe landing location anywhere in the region, the fleet broke up. Part of the fleet sailed down to St. Augustine, Florida. Some went to join the main British fleet in New York, and a portion, including Governor Dunmore, sailed back to London. Although Lord Dunmore would remain on the British payroll as the Royal Governor of Virginia until the end of the war, he would never again set foot in Virginia. The British Navy would attempt another raid up the Potomac River in 1779, but the British Army would never contest the state again until 1781 in the campaign that ended with the surrender at Yorktown. I hope you've enjoyed this Revolution 250 moment. For more context on this story, check out episodes 69 and 77 of the American Revolution podcast at blog.amrevpodcast.com. And please subscribe for free to the entire podcast on whatever platform you like. We're available on Apple, Spotify, and a host of other platforms. Thanks again for listening to this Revolution 250 moment on the American Revolution podcast.